golden opportunities for the empowerment and growth of all its people. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now hear from His Excellency, the President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. He will update us on his recent international engagements. Mr. President.
Members of the press.
Recording in progress.
Members of the press, good morning. Those who are tuning in via social media, good morning. This morning I wish to update the population and the media on various outcomes in terms of my international engagements. I wish to give a summary of the discussions, the results of those discussions, and what we can expect in relation to various meetings I've had over the last few months. These include my participation at the 6th Summit of the Community of Latin America and Caribbean States, my visit to the United Nations and several bilateral meetings, my involvement at the UNCTAD meeting in Barbados, and my attendance at the World Expo 2020 in Dubai. I will also highlight key focus areas at the upcoming 26th Conference of Parties on Climate Change scheduled for November 1st to the 12th, COP26 in Glasgow, Scotland. As you're aware, yesterday we launched the consultation for the LCDS, and that is an important part of what we'll be promoting in Glasgow itself. In September, I attended the 6th Summit of the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States, CELAC, in Mexico City, where I emphasized our concerns in the following three main areas: food security in the region, and our need to develop and bolster our food production in a sustainable and profitable manner. As you're aware, food security is an emerging threat. The sustainability of food supply is an issue in our region. And when I say our region here, it's the Caribbean and Latin American states. To compound this, we have seen sharp increases globally, and these has to do not only with production issues, but supply chain issues, logistic issues, transportation issues. If these challenges persist under the current environment, we're going to be severely challenged in the region in terms of food supply and pricing. As a result of this, there is renewed interest in food production, agricultural production, food sustainability, and security. And we have been taking a proactive approach in positioning Guyana as a major player in the food supply chain, firstly within the CARICOM region and then wider afield. I will expand on a few specific initiatives that we are pursuing bilaterally in a few moments. We also discussed the issues of the unfair and inequitable distribution and access to COVID-19 vaccines, and enjoined the call for a CELAC membership, being able to accelerate research development, production, and global distribution of COVID-19 vaccines and treatment based on the principle of international solidarity. So at that meeting, we agreed that the region itself will build capacity in terms of research and development, vaccine production, and a logistics system and infrastructure that would allow us to take care of the needs of the region. We have seen the tremendous difficulties the region faced in the early stages and in response to the vaccination aspect of the pandemic. Access to vaccines was a very difficult situation for most of the countries in the region. So at that meeting in CEDAC, concrete steps were discussed at building the capacity within the region itself. We also identified priority issues for the Caribbean Small Island Developing States sits on the heels of COP26. We call on leaders to share particular focus on climate change and disaster risk management, access to concessional financing, high levels of indebtedness, natural disaster funds, and graduated transition. Guyana supports the establishment of a voluntary fund to facilitate regional disaster response. You will see one of the key themes in all of my engagements internationally has been around food security and sustainability, climate change, climate action, and of course, our deep interest and commitment in addressing the fundamental problems and issues of climate change, including the transitional resources that are key and critical in adaptation and mitigation. In Mexico also, I had the opportunity to meet with a number of potential investors who had a wide range of interests, from cement production to housing development, tourism, and mining. Very early in the new year, we expect a contingent from Mexico to be here to discuss their interests in partnering with the local private sector and advancing work on some of these opportunities. One of the key things I've emphasized in all my meetings with various investors, and we have met from the most sophisticated financial institutions to the most sophisticated technological investors, is that there must be collaboration and cooperation, involvement of the local private sector. At the United Nations General Assembly, as you're aware, I've highlighted various issues, including issues surrounding the COVID-19 pandemic, the disparity in vaccination distribution, and the preferential treatment of vaccines. I addressed the issue of climate change, the issue of the Venezuela controversy, and of course, we reiterated our position on the need for a peaceful two-state solution between Israel and Palestine, and we called for the normalization of relationships between the U.S. and Cuba. In addition, I participated in various events held during the General Assembly week, including a ceremony commemorating the 20th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks, where I had the opportunity of reiterating Guyana's firm commitment in fighting international and transnational crimes and our firm support to the international community in advancing work to end terrorism and to fight every aspect of international crime and terrorism. The SDG moment was an important activity where I highlighted Guyana's commitment to inclusive development, I had the opportunity to elaborate on our various development initiatives and reported on our progress in achieving the SDGs. As you know, the Sustainable Development Goals that are set for 2030 are severely threatened, not only for Guyana, but for countries in the region and globally. That is as a result of various factors: the increased natural disasters, the consequential effect of climate change, the pandemic has really set back progress towards the achievement of the SDGs. And this is a major issue leaders around the world, including Guyana, are challenged with. How do we still achieve the SDGs under these very trying circumstances? So it requires realignment of resources. It requires the reprioritizing of budgetary allocation. It requires also the support of the international community on debt servicing, on reprogramming of resources, and having more resources available. Because as you're aware, the developing world has had to invest a lot in our fight against this pandemic. The high-level event on Multidimensional Vulnerability Index, where I pointed out the unique vulnerability faced by SIDS and welcome the renewed attention being paid to the development of the Multidimensional Vulnerability Index. Now, as you know, there is a call regionally, and CARICOM has been a major part of this call, for a multidimensional vulnerability index. That index would help to rate countries in terms of your vulnerability to natural disasters and effects of climate change. And these vulnerabilities and effects would definitely have a link to the type of resources and the type of action that are taken and support that is given to those countries. At the Alliance of Small Island States, EOSIS Leaders Summit, I called for a renewed global effort in the fight against climate change to meet the goal of the Paris Agreement. Now, many may say that it's a broken record calling for the developed world to meet their commitment in terms of the $100 billion pledge, and that that message has been overworked and we're getting nowhere with that message. Well, we can compare it to the democracy message. Democracy is important. We have to keep talking about democracy where democracy doesn't exist, but it's not overworked. It is important. We can't talk about new commitments on climate issues and climate change when we are not honoring the existing commitment of $100 billion. So those issues were discussed. We also examined issues of exposure to external economic shocks. That is the member states of the Alliance of Small Island States. We have greater exposure to economic shocks, our ecological fragility, and our susceptibility to natural hazards. Just look at COVID-19 alone. The increases in transportation costs, logistics, and delays are affecting smaller developing states more intensely than large states. So these were issues that were discussed. At the bilateral level, we held discussions with the UN Secretary General, reiterated our commitment to the ICJ process on the controversy, Venezuelan controversy, and requested his office to encourage Venezuela to participate fully in the case before the court. I also updated the Secretary General on our development agenda, oil and gas strategy, and our commitment to the fight against climate change. In my bilateral meeting with the Secretary General of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, we discussed the completion of an updated country strategy that is reflective of the new government's agenda in the context of the Islamic Development Bank support in realizing projects and programs of the country. I also outlined Guyana's interests in expanding its livestock and poultry production in keeping with the Halal industry specifications and our effort to host and offer to host an OIC headquarters in the region. Now, the Halal industry certification is important for us as we work on expanding our livestock industry and our poultry industry. This is a niche market, and it's a market that has tremendous potential for our local producers. As you're aware, we are working aggressively on a program to reduce the input costs, to reduce the costs of production, increase our efficiency, and improve and increase our production to become a large-scale producers and suppliers of livestock and poultry products and supplies. In the bilateral with the President of Ghana, we discussed issues that included collaboration in the oil and gas sector and climate change. As a follow-up to this bilateral, Vice President Jagdeo led a team to Ghana, the outcome of which included technical teams that will be here shortly to give to review work on the gas to shore energy project and to give us their opinion and technical views. They will work with us on the finalization of our local content legislation, and they'll assist in the amendment of the Sovereign Wealth Fund legislation. This technical team, the first phase of this technical team, which are the CEOs, the highly competent persons in these specific areas, will be here very early in the new month to start work. All of these areas, the local content fund legislation, are to be tabled in the National Assembly and debated before the end of this year. It is also expected that the Vice President of Ghana will be visiting Guyana later this year, and it is anticipated that the President of Ghana will participate in the Oil and Gas Conference set for February 2022. In addition, a team of investors will be visiting Guyana to establish partnership with local counterparts in various investment opportunities. So, in addition to the technical teams and the cooperation at the bilateral level, we have also established an opportunity for cooperation and collaboration and partnership with the private sector from Ghana and that of Guyana. And a team from Ghana will be here in Guyana to look at this specifically. They have various areas of interest: agriculture, mining, the tourism. They have a wide array of interests. Food production. So we are hoping that the local private sector can actively participate and create the environment for this partnership to prosper. I also met with the president of the IDB. We discussed the finalization of Guyana's program with the bank. The president of the bank highlighted the fact that the priorities of the the government of Guyana are aligned with that of the bank, and is keen on being a primary partner with Guyana. I must say that the International Development Bank re-emphasized its commitment to Guyana and to be one of our primary partners. So we are hoping to, we had this high-level engagement that the president of the bank himself would be coming to Guyana to have a first-hand analysis and understanding of the development challenges, the aspirations, and the type of projects that are critical for the social and economic transformation of our country. In my bilateral meeting with the Secretary General of the Organization of American States, he reiterated the organization's commitment and support in electoral reform and the strengthening of democracy in Guyana. This was a fundamental theme of discussion with the Secretary General of the OAS, and he reiterated their support and willingness to help Guyana in ensuring that we strengthen our democracy and that the electoral reform, whatever help is needed on the side of electoral reform, they were willing to assist. Our bilateral meeting with the President of Kosovo, we agreed to support Kosovo's bid to be members of several international organizations. Kosovo also expressed its desire to conclude an agreement with Guyana that will facilitate trade between the two countries. The President of Austria and I also met, and we discussed several areas of interest, including the health sector, climate change, oil and gas, and investments. In my bilateral with the President of Maldives, we discussed collaboration in areas relating to climate change and reaffirmed our joint commitment and credentials on the environment. As you're aware, Maldives and Guyana always supported each other and were strong promoter on issues of climate change and operated more or less like a spin twin. We were able to rekindle those relationships and to put together the technical team to collaborate and work together in areas of climate change and addressing areas of climate change. In my bilateral with His Highness Prince Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud of Saudi Arabia, we discussed partnership and collaboration in oil and gas, issues relating to COP26, and the development of a nuanced approach to a decarbonized world. While both of us agreed that we have to get to a decarbonized world, we discussed the development of a nuanced approach to a decarbonized world. We also discussed finding the right energy mix. We had an elaborate discussion on energy security and having the right energy mix that is sustainable for Guyana. Guyana's transformative agenda and investment opportunities. As you know, these are new areas, somewhat to say that we are pushing Guyana, the opportunities in Guyana, the investment opportunities. So we had strong discussions on that. And also, His Highness committed to a team from Saudi Arabia visiting to discuss these areas, but importantly, to work with our technical people in relation to the Sovereign Wealth Fund. In addition to these strong socio-economic developmental issues, we discussed the issues of visas for Guyanese Hajj participants and the improved presence of Saudi Arabia in the CARICOM region. In my bilateral with Prime Minister of Kuwait, we discussed again cooperation in the areas of climate change, oil and gas, investment. As you know, the Kuwaiti Investment Fund, he reaffirmed that the Kuwaiti Investment Fund stand ready to discuss with us our national development needs and priorities and to see how the Kuwaiti Development Fund can work with Guyana in supporting those development needs. The Prime Minister of Kuwait expressed the desire to lead a team, including his private sector, to Guyana. And again, next year, we will be planning to facilitate this visit by the Prime Minister of Kuwait and his team. In my bilateral with the President of Colombia, we discussed our mutual concerns on climate change, the environment, the strengthening of strategic cooperation in the area of defense and security. And this was a key area that we discussed the issue of transnational crime, and we discussed a strong approach and a new differentiated approach in strategic cooperation in the areas of defense and security. At that meeting, President Marquez also expressed a desire to have an official visit to Guyana in the new year. In addition to these bilateral meetings, I had the opportunity to participate in the Goldman Sachs Leaders Forum on Economic Recovery and Restructuring in Emerging Economies and the integral role of energy and infrastructure development. I had the opportunity to meet with a number of financial institutions, the diaspora, religious leaders, and potential investors. I now wish to turn my attention to UNCTAD. I attended the 15th United Nations Conference on Trade and Development meeting in Barbados and had the opportunity to speak in the leaders' debate on issues pertaining to the world's current development path, as well as the need to give more impetus to multilateralism. In Barbados, I had the opportunity to hold bilateral talks with Prime Minister Motley and President Kenyatta of Kenya. We discussed ways in which Guyana and Kenya could strengthen the bilateral relationship and agreed that our technical teams would meet to elaborate on an agenda that would give practical formation to our desire. In my discussion with Prime Minister Motley, we hammered out a concrete time-bound framework for enhanced collaboration and trade between Guyana and Barbados in the areas of food production and export. Some of the areas we discussed and have agreement on to pursue are increased production of food, removal of barriers to trade, and the possibility of a Guyana-Barbados food terminal. Transport, logistics, and efficiency, agro-processing facilities, a Guyana-Barbados food sustainability plan, identification of sanitary gaps and commitment to bridging those gaps through the exchange of technical expertise and the budgeting of resources to remove those gaps. Exchange of technicians between the ministries of agriculture to facilitate smooth and efficient transaction flow. So what we have agreed on is that we will have a Guyanese in the Ministry of Agriculture in Barbados and a Bajan in the Ministry of Agriculture in Guyana, so that Guyanese can deal directly with their counterpart in Barbados, and the same thing, Barbados can deal directly with their counterpart, thus removing the hassle, the barriers, the bureaucracy. That is what we're trying to remove here. We also discussed the opportunities in quarry, feedstock, livestock, and limestone. Direct support for tourism sector with exchange airtime of 45 minutes per week for the reciprocal promotion of both countries. So we agreed, both Prime Minister Motley and I, that we'll exchange 45 minutes of airtime for the promotion of Barbados in Guyana and for the promotion of Guyana in Barbados. In addition to this, we agreed on working out the mechanism for the twinning of our tourism product, for the joint marketing of our tourism product, and to promote Guyana and Barbados as a common destination. So we spoke about the development of a joint marketing strategy in traditional and non-traditional markets, and importantly, knowing the needs that we will have for personnel in the hospitality sector. We agreed with Barbados that they will support us in the training of 6,000 Guyanese for the hospitality sector. You know, Barbados has an established a world-class hospitality program, and they're going to support us in the training of 6,000 Guyanese who will function in the hospitality sector. We discussed the sharing of port space to facilitate trade and reduce costs for the movement of goods between the two countries. So what we discuss is to identify specific port space for Barbados in Guyana and for Guyana in Barbados to reduce the costs of transportation, to improve the efficiency, to enhance trade, and to deliver product at a far cheaper cost to the markets. Barbados is committed to exploring our wood, forestry products to enhance value and incorporate them in the Barbados market. Both countries discussed the possibility of adding value to Guyana's gold by creating a gold market hub concept in Barbados. Now, many of you would travel internationally and you would hear of gold markets. If you go in some Caribbean countries, you would know that some cruise liners go to some islands specifically because of the creation of a gold market hub. So that is what we are trying to create. Barbados is a major cruise destination, and we are working on the possibility of adding value to Guyana gold and creating a gold market hub concept in Barbados. Prime Minister Motley and I committed to a time frame through which the results of this enhanced partnership will be felt by the population of both countries. Subsequently, a high-level delegation from Barbados recently visited Guyana to commence the technical work on the opportunities discussed between Prime Minister Motley and myself. My visit in Dubai was focused on discussing key areas of interest for Guyana. But before I go into those areas, I want to thank the members of the cultural team, those Guyanese we have working in the Guyana Pavilion, for the excellent work that they have been doing, and for the type of commitment they have shown in promoting Guyana. So we discussed various areas, including food security, project financing, and what was overwhelming is the unprecedented level of interest in Guyana non-oil economy. One thing is for certain, oil and gas has placed us in the international eye, or if you would want to say, in the center of the eye. But it has given us an opportunity also to demonstrate Guyana other potential that are as equally or more important than oil and gas in a sustainability framework. And that is why we were super excited at the tremendous interest shown in Guyana non-oil, the non-oil economy, including such sectors as the extractive sector, gold and bauxite, agriculture, tourism, and other services. We were taken aback at the number of groups that actually traveled to meet the Guyanese delegation from different countries in that region, expressing various desire and interests in investment in Guyana. We spoke at the UAE in strengthening our relations between our private sectors and generally moving beyond the traditional government-to-government bilateral relations. Opportunities abound for business-to-business partnership, and companies in Guyana are interested in well-positioned to enter into strategic partnership with their global counterparts. In Dubai, meetings were held with His Highness Sheikh Zayed Al Nahyan, the UAE Minister of State for International Cooperation and Managing Director of Dubai World Expo, where our two countries committed to strengthen bilateral relations and to build on the foundation already laid to promote increased activities between our two countries. In this regard, an MOU was signed at a final meeting with Sheikh Abdullah, committing our two countries to advance technical cooperation and technical assistance in several areas. While in Dubai, we had extensive discussion with Khalifa Port, or the Abu Dhabi ports. As you're aware, they had two technical teams in Guyana working and looking at the possibility of the establishment of a deep water harbor linked to Brazil. And at that meeting, we had in-depth discussions on this possibility. The interest is great in this project, and in 2 to 3 weeks, they will have a second team coming with, to follow up on the evaluation. And they're looking at a modern state-of-the-art port facility operated with cutting-edge technology, focusing on efficiency, safety, and security. Importantly, we had a meeting with Mubadala, which is the UAE's sovereign investment vehicle, which has over 240 billion in assets across 6 continents, which invests in a national world-class, they invest in world-class infrastructure around the world. They also support industrial and commercial clusters, and they partner with global entities to support national development. It was agreed that Guyana will share project proposals with Mubadala for funding considerations. As we speak, the Ministry of Finance is working on a portfolio of projects to be discussed with Mubadala. A meeting with the Dubai Chamber of Commerce was held also, with opportunities for closer relations between the private sector of Guyana and that of Dubai were discussed. The Dubai Chamber offered to facilitate the establishment of a Guyana trade office in Dubai to promote and expedite investment and trade partnership on an ongoing basis. In Dubai also, we held several meetings with major groups and corporations, including Elite Agro, a major global investor, producer, and distributor of agricultural and food products, including fresh vegetables and fruits, coffee, and tea. The Al Habtoul Group, which has major investments in tourism and hospitality, and the Dubai Multi-Commodities Center, DMCC. All 3 entities are planning to visit Guyana shortly, and their interests are in collaborating with the local private sector in developing local capacity, increasing production, and expanding trade opportunities. Their interests are in varied areas, including coffee production, tea production, agro-processing, specialty markets for fruits and vegetables, gold refinery, large-scale mining opportunities, and technology transfer. I now wish to turn my attention to COP26. As you're aware, I will be joining global leaders at COP26. Guyana will be participating fully, both at the policy and political level and at the technical level. The focus for COP26 will be on 4 themes, including enhanced country commitments on forests and land use, including reducing deforestation and accelerating forest restoration, scaling finance and investment, including private sector finance, sharing action towards sustainable production and consumption, and 4, support for local people and stakeholders. We intend to signal our commitment, as every other nation, that we all have a responsibility to climate change, but it must be differentiated. We will outline a realistic and achievable emission reduction ambition for Guyana. And it is very important that we outline a realistic and achievable ambition target. We cannot go and criticize countries that are not sticking to their commitment, and then we make targets that cannot be achieved. We have to communicate targets that are achievable and realistic. And that is what we'll be doing. And these targets and ambition will be in keeping with our energy strategy and programming. We must appreciate that Guyana is already a net carbon sink. We'll address issues of accessibility to financing for mitigation and adaptation for small island development states. We'll pursue initiatives to strengthen and expand the market for the sale of carbon credits, and we intend to renew our call for the implementation of the commitment made to the fulfillment of the $100 billion pledge. Guyana will endorse the Glasgow Declaration on Forests and Land Use, which includes strengthening our efforts for forest conservation, ecosystem, and accelerated restoration, promoting development policies and strategies that foster sustainable development, reduce vulnerability, build resilience, and enhance resilient rural livelihoods. Greater investments in food security, appropriate technology and infrastructure for hinterland communities, and redesign agricultural policies and programs to incentivize investment and expansion. Our participation in COP will reestablish Guyana as a leading example for net carbon sink. In addition to events surrounding COP26, I'll be having a number of bilateral engagements where I intend to promote Guyana among investors and major financial institutions. Members of the press, ladies and gentlemen, this is a brief overview of my international engagement, some of the outcomes, and some of the issues that we have discussed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for a comprehensive report on your administration and the promotion of Guyana across the world. Thank you again, sir. His Excellency will now respond to questions, your questions. I want to remind you of our protocol, our press conference protocol. Please use your emoji to indicate that you have a question, and when you have been identified, please state your name and then proceed with your question for the President. We'll take our first question now from Nazima.
In relation to the Deepwater Harbor, where funding is going to come from, has that been discussed at any level, and how you are going to proceed with funding that? And sir, could you say also if when you're likely to get a decision on the visa for Hajj participants? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nazima. Thank you very much, Nazima. The Deepwater Harbor, as you know, is a project that is across borders: Brazil, Suriname, and Guyana. We have started discussions with both Brazil and Suriname. All three countries are strongly committed to this project. Brazil has reinforced their commitment because, as you know, the Deepwater Harbor is important in terms of their own efficiency, capability. It affects the cost of doing business for them very positively. So what we are looking at here is private sector investment, and what Abu Dhabi Ports is looking at is working, leading a, first of all, they're leading the studies to come up with a technical evaluation and then a financial evaluation. Their initial assessment is one of great optimism. That's how they describe it. They believe that this is a project that can happen, that this is a project that is viable, They are now working on the if you want to say the nitty-gritty, the finer details in terms of this project. And of course, on the table will be Guyana, Brazil, Suriname. To further discuss the regional integration across borders, we are already scheduled to have a strategic meeting between Guyana, Suriname, Brazil, and I think French Guyana early in the new year. But this will be primarily private sector driven.
Thank you.
Oh, and the second question,
question,
The second question in relation to Hajj visas. So they have committed to looking at this issue. One of the immediate response from them is that they can send an official in Guyana to process all the visas, and that would be of great assistance to them, to process all the visas at one time. So they are very committed to helping and addressing this issue.
So, President, do you have any idea how many people go to Hajj yearly from Guyana?
Nazima, you asked me a question there that I would not know the exact number, but I know a lot. Maybe I can say when my parents would have completed Hajj, it would have been in their batch close to 100. So and then you have persons from the diaspora who also joined the Guyana delegation. Guyanese in the diaspora who joined the Guyanese delegation to go to Hajj. It's a lot of persons,
For those questions, I'll take questions now from the following persons: Dennis, then Marcel. Please go ahead, Dennis.
Mr. President, good morning. Sir, could you say with respect to electoral reform, when will the government be actually circulating the draft amendments to the legislation? And quickly, sir, if you'll permit, to what extent will you be heeding the call by the Deputy Speaker, Mr. Schuman, to meet with the opposition leader to discuss the appointments of substantive Chancellor and Chief Justice, as well as a Commissioner of Police? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dennis. First of all, on the issue of electoral reform, only yesterday I urged the Attorney General, and what we are working on is to have this the draft legislation circulated sometime next week among all the stakeholders. We have to have an efficient time frame on this. I've also asked him that circulation be done sometime next week, and that 6 weeks be given for the review and for comments on the draft legislation. So that will be done next week, and 6 weeks for the review, so that we can expeditiously move forward with this. I don't know about heeding any call. What I know is that you have a president who will fulfill his constitutional mandate. And my constitutional mandate in the appointment of various constitutional office holder will be done in full conformity with the requirements of the Constitution. I assure you this.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll now invite Marcel. Please go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. President. Marcel Thomas from the Starbuck News. You made an announcement that the MOU with the UAE was signed to advance technical help with us. I want to know if there was a time frame incorporated into that agreement, given that in November 2020 we had a delegation from the UAE. They had promised to look into investments across board, and I think given some commitments to agriculture, yet at the end of 2021 we haven't heard much about how that was coming. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcel. Well, this is how development operates. There's a lot of what you will say the technical work. So this year we had many technical teams. For example, Abu Dhabi ports came down. We had a technical team that came down to assess our IT infrastructure. A technical team that came to analyze our energy infrastructure. A technical team that came down to look at our agricultural potential. And now all those technical teams would have completed their reports. And that is why the next stage was to meet with a different group. For example, Elite Agro and the Commodities Inc. These are the groups now that move to implementation. And that is the next phase now, when they will come to partner with the local private sector in advancing this work. So a lot has been done in terms of the follow-up from the Dubai itself. The Minister of Finance and the private sector is supposed to be having a few Zoom meetings this week and next week to follow up and to continue the discussion so that we can finalize areas that we're going to work on in the coming year.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll now take questions from Rihanna, Sean, Kurt, and then Abina. Rihanna? Rihanna, you may go ahead.
Good morning, Rihanna Ahmad, Guyana Chronicle. Mr. President, I know you've previously spoken about the bilateral engagements that you would have had heading into COP26. Can you say what maybe some of the definitive commitments that you would have received from other countries as you head into the conference? And secondly, if you could provide an update also on the Judicial Service Commission.
So in terms of COP26 and commitment, as you know, every country is going there. Almost all the leaders are going to represent their interests. But in CARICOM, we have had many meetings on coordinating our efforts. We are working with AOSIS, we are working with CARICOM, we are working with CELAC on joint position and coordination. And that is why the pre-discussions and bilateral meetings were so important. So we are coordinating even with Maldives. As you know, Guyana is in a unique position. We are now part of that oil and gas producing state, and also we have strong credentials on the environment, and we're taking leadership on the environment. So we had to enhance our collaboration with other countries who are oil and gas producing, so that we can also start sending a message of sustainability to them, that listen, we all have to move to a decarbonized world, but this is how we get there. And we have been communicating Guyana's intention, agenda, but building international collaboration, building international support. And as we speak now, we have the technical team in the unit working bilaterally, working with different agencies, coordinating efforts. Meetings are ongoing right now. So in terms of commitment, the commitment will be to the general goals and declaration. But what is interesting is, and that is why COP is so interesting, is what is coming out of the developed world. What will be their position on some very key issues. For example, the $100 billion. President Biden has already signaled that they are going to come with a new slew of measures and proposals in terms of climate change. The difference here at COP26 is that after the policy level and the political level, the technical level is where the negotiations and the hammering out of documents, recommendations, and issues will take place. In terms of the Judicial Service Commission, all the commissions, on my return from COP, we will be addressing the issues of not only the commissions, but issues in relation to boards and everything. So the issue of the Judicial Service Commission is a priority on the agenda.
Thank you, sir. I'll now take questions from Sean, after which, Kurt, you may proceed. Go ahead, sir.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Mr. President. Mr. President, you spoke about a menu of collaboration with Guyana and Barbados, one of which involves Guyanese being trained in the hospitality sector, around 6,000 Guyanese. Could you say if this training will take place in Guyana or in Barbados? And when will it begin? And will it be for what duration? And is it only 6,000 or it will increase periodically? And my second question is reference the goal market hub that is to be established with Barbados as well. Will this be a government arrangement, or will it involve the private sector as well? And to what extent?
Thank you very much, Sean, for those interesting questions. The gold market is not government to government will set the framework. We have to discuss the policy. We have to discuss the mechanism. But what is important here is that the private sector will be the key drivers. So in Barbados, for example, you have some capacity in the craft of jewelry making. In Guyana, we have capacity. So we have to now extend that capacity, expand that capacity, because we have to create a win-win situation. As you know, the mechanism as to how the market will be established, the type of incentives that will have to be given, the type of tax regime that will have to be established, those are the things that has to be ironed out. And now that we have identified this as an area of cooperation and collaboration. But the drive of this, after we have established the vehicle, would be the private sector. In terms of the 6,000 Guyanese, this will be an ongoing, but why an ongoing effort? But why we have to move aggressively with the 6,000 Guyanese now is because we have a lot of investment in the hospitality sector that is coming, and we need to have the technical capacity, the human resources to manage and to work in those hotels and so on that are coming. So the need for training is immediate. Now, I don't have the details in relation to the length of program, but what I can tell you is that the program will be redesigned to ensure that all the Guyanese benefit, and I'm sure there will be some exchange. Technology has make it very much simpler for us to achieve this. So, so it will be using distance learning. It will be online training, and maybe some amount of exchange program.
Can I have a follow-up, please, sir? This is to my colleague's question on you answered that you will, on your return, you will deal with all the commissions. Will this be done too in line with the Constitution and with norms, with opposition members being part of those commissions?
Anything this president does will be in line with the Constitution. You can go to bed and sleep comfortable, enjoy the best of dreams, knowing that in reality, you have a president that will do everything in keeping with the Constitution of the Republic of Guyana.
Thank you, sir. Kurt, I've noticed you have lowered your hand, so I'll give now the opportunity to Abino.
Good morning. You hearing me as well? Hello?
Abina, I can hear you.
Okay. Abina Rockcliffe, Guyana Standard. Mr. President, in promoting Guyana as a key player in the food supply chain, were there any major concerns raised by countries in the region that will stop them from readily supporting Guyana in this quest? And as a part two to that question, I heard you talk about climate change. And we're cognizant that because of that, there's sometimes unpredictable and heavy rainfall that can really put a spoke in the wheel of Guyana's production. Are there any major projects in the pipeline to avoid devastation or setback for farmers if we experience heavy rainfall in the short term or so?
Abina, thank you very much. Those are very, very interesting questions. You raised the issue of whether there were any country in opposition to this, the Guyana food chain plan. It's a very important question. So in CARICOM, for example, we are working on a 25 by 2025 plan. That is reducing our food import bill by 25% by 2025. To achieve this, we have established a subcommittee dealing with agriculture and food security. And we have made it very clear that we have to do this together. So we have to see who has the best competitive advantage in what area and work in developing that competitive advantage to the benefit of the region. That is as it relates to CARICOM. Now, we can't approach this as a winner situation. We have to work on creating a win-win situation. That is why these bilaterals are so important and in developing a regional solution. Because at the end of the day, everyone must see themselves as winners, as part of the supply chain, as beneficiaries of the supply chain. So the farmers in the smallest, most affected island must feel part of the food supply chain. That is the way we build ownership regionally and reduce the ability for any contention or contentious situation between and among states. Rainfall, the climate change and the unprecedented weather pattern is an important issue we have to take into consideration. There are two issues here, and one is being addressed by CARICOM itself. That is the crop insurance for agriculture. That is something we are addressing regionally. But here in Guyana, there are some infrastructure projects that are key. Just like we have the Hope Canal, the DNI, I think they've already advertised. If not, they're in the process of advertising to have a technical study to look at our drainage pattern and to look at the last floods and the 2005 floods and to see in the agricultural belt in key areas where we can establish similar canals like the Hope Canal that would have a direct outlet to the Atlantic, a direct outlet, and that is important for us. At the residential end, we are also launching a project where we're going to, in the first phase, look at concreting all the internal drains in Georgetown, the small drains in the community. And then we'll have a major study. South Georgetown, for example, is an area that has tremendous problems in heavy rainfall. So we are going to have a major study, and we're going to invest a major amount of resources to rectify that drainage problem, even in a residential area, because it has a link to food security too. When they're flooded out and we have to find resources, and they have to find resources to repair things that were damaged in floods, for example, or to reconstruct your losses, then it affects your ability to provide the food, because it's a balance of resources at the end of the day, and your priority changes in flooded conditions. So those investments will be made also. Thank you.
Thank you,
Two
Mr.
more
President.
questions, so.
Okay. I'll only permit two more questions, and this time I'll invite Ms. Malik Chan to ask your question.
How much more questions?
Thank you. Good morning. Sir, I have a question on the UA investment vehicle, Mubadala. You said the finance ministry is looking at projects. I want to know, is there anything specific you're looking at or you will prioritize to get investment for?
Go ahead, sir.
So, you know, our priority is on a few things. One, we have the transformative agenda. That is our infrastructure, our healthcare system, our education system. We have the new city, housing, the housing at a national scale. And then we have, in this fund, you have the opportunity to address economic projects too. Projects that has severe and important economic impact. For example, the development of an industrial zone, the commercial and industrial zone. These are key projects in a new economy beyond oil and gas that will enhance our capacity, create new jobs. The innovative industry, AI, these are things that they are good at. And so that is why the Ministry of Finance is looking at our entire program portfolio, not project portfolio, program portfolio to submit to the UAE.
Thank you. I'll take two final questions, one from Vishani and the other from Sharda. Vishani, you may go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Mr. President. Vishani from the newsroom. Firstly, Mr. President, could you say, we know that Guyanese vaccinated with the Sputnik V, they might not be able to travel to some countries that have vaccination requirements for entry. Can you say if the government will be considering revaccination, particularly for those vaccinated with the Sputnik vaccine? And also, will Guyana be advocating for certain travel exemptions if revaccination is not being considered? And secondly, more on COP, can you say if Guyana is heading into the climate conference with bipartisan support for what you said were the realistic and achievable targets?
Well, let me put it this way. The targets that I spoke of would also be discussed in the context of the LCDS. But the targets in terms of the energy, renewable energy, are things that we have been discussing nationally. When I say realistic and achievable, we can't say Guyana will be 100% on renewable energy by 2025 or 2030 when there is not a single project, a single major project in a renewable energy pipeline. If we were to achieve that, we should have already had nearing completion the Amiras Falls Hydro project and major investment, hundreds of millions of dollars of investment in other areas of alternative energy, including the natural gas. So that is what is realistic. You have to be realistic with a timetable. 5 years we had no investment, no structured approach. Now we have a programmable, renewable energy platform and portfolio that we are pushing and addressing. So that is what makes it realistic and achievable. The Sputnik V, now let me say that we have been advocating globally about non-vaccine discrimination. And many countries have now joined that campaign in non-vaccine discrimination, including the World Health Organization. They issued a statement that there should be no discrimination based on vaccine after we address the United Nations. Now, the Ministry of Health and the technical people would have to issue, or they would have to advise on the mixing of vaccine 1 and 2. This will be like a booster shot. If you say that persons with Sputnik, hypothetically, can now take any of the other vaccine as a booster, that is something that has to be technically approved and approved by the medical professionals. And I'm guided by what advice I get from the medical professionals in relation to this. First and foremost is the safety and health and well-being of the people. All right? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Please permit me to take one final
Yes, sir.
question. Sharda, I noticed you've lowered your hand, but you had it up before, so I'd like to give you the opportunity to ask your question.
Good morning.
Sharda Bacchus from the Starboard News. Mr. President, can you say, despite several calls, why does the government remain unwilling to meet with the GPSU on wages and salary negotiations for public servants? And just a follow-up to the Judicial Service Commission question, you said, Mr. President, you said that you're committed to abiding by the Constitution. Are you saying that you're now prepared to engage the opposition leader without any preconditions?
Let me be very clear. As I said, I am fully committed to abiding by every aspect of the Constitution. There is no precondition to fulfilling my mandate in accordance with the Constitution. But there is an issue, and this is outside of that mandate in relation to my constitutional role, where you have someone who is continuously saying that this government is illegitimate. So he has a moral problem. How does he explain talking to some government he is claiming is illegitimate? That's his moral problem. And that would expose his duplicity. That would expose his duplicity, and I think that is his problem. But I am very committed and totally committed to the Constitution. Whatever the Constitution requires me to do, I will do. I have no hesitation in doing that. And in terms of meeting the public service union, I'm sure that is a matter for the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service Ministry. And definitely you can engage them on both matters. But as I said earlier this year, that we are committed to increases for the public servants, and that commitment will be fulfilled before the end of the year. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. And with that, we've come to the end of today's press conference. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us, and thank you, viewers, as well.